So don't have any illusions about who's running this network from now on. You're fired. I want you out of your office before noon, or I'll have you thrown out.
7 Oscar nominations across 7 decades, with one win coming in 1984. Robert Duvall stood among the most respected actors of his era.
Father would want to hear this. This is business, not personal.
They shot my father.
Even the shooting of your father was business, not personal, Sonny.
42 years separate the first entry from the last, stretching from his screen debut as Boo Radley in 1962's To Kill a Mockingbird to 2014's The Judge, a courtroom drama that earned him an Oscar nomination at age 84. But if you only know him from The Godfather or Apocalypse Now, you're missing the deeper half of a body of work that helped shape American movies for over half a century. Robert Duvall has repeatedly called 1972's Tomorrow his best role, and almost nobody saw it. This micro-budget Faulkner adaptation, filmed in black and white across rural Mississippi, casts him as Jackson Fentry, a reclusive sawmill caretaker who takes in a pregnant drifter. It's a quiet story about love, loss, and a grudge stretching across decades.
Why don't you stay on out here till after your baby is born?
Duvall first inhabited Fentry on stage in 1968 at the H.B. Playwrights Foundation Theater in Greenwich Village, and that lived-in quality carried over when the chance to make the film arrived. Horton Foote adapted the screenplay from William Faulkner's short story, first published in the Saturday Evening Post in 1940, and Foote had already turned it into a Playhouse 90 teleplay in 1960, starring Richard Boone. Walker Evans' Depression-era photographs inspired the producers to shoot it in black and white, a bold choice for 1972 that ended up hurting distribution. There's an interesting connection to 1996's Sling Blade. Billy Bob Thornton has admitted he flipped out when he first encountered Tomorrow in 1988, and the voice and mannerisms of Carl Childers in Sling Blade are widely believed to trace back to Duvall's Fentry. Years later, Duvall appeared in Sling Blade as Carl's father, closing the circle. The movie is available to stream on YouTube, and it's linked in the description. John Flynn directed 1973's The Outfit as a lean, stripped-down neo-noir about a career criminal named Earl Macklin, played by Duvall, who walks out of prison, discovers his brother was murdered by an organized crime syndicate, and sets about dismantling them, piece by piece. He plays Macklin as cold and professional, treating revenge like a day job. Richard Stark's novel provided the source material, part of the same Parker series that produced Point Blank with Lee Marvin. Author Donald E. Westlake specifically praised Duvall's performance, saying he conformed much more precisely to the conception of the character than Marvin had. Westlake also called it the one movie from a Stark book that captured the feeling right. The supporting cast assembled around Duvall tells its own story. Robert Ryan turned up in one of his final roles before dying in July 1973, alongside Elisha Cook Jr., Jane Greer, and Marie Windsor, all veterans of 1940s film noir who were cast deliberately to bridge that tradition with 1970s grit. This fell right between The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 for Duvall, a period when People magazine dubbed him Hollywood's #1, #2 lead, and The Outfit stands as one of his first true starring roles, proving he could carry a film on his own without Brando or Pacino sharing the screen. One of the most personal roles of Duvall's career came in 1979's The Great Santini, where he portrays Lieutenant Colonel Wilbur Bull Meacham, a Marine fighter pilot who runs his household like a platoon. Bull excels in the air and devastates everyone at home, a warrior stationed in peacetime 1962 Beaufort, South Carolina, with no enemy to fight except the people who love him. Growing up as the son of a Navy Rear Admiral gave Duvall the raw material to play a military father whose intensity crosses the line into cruelty. Pat Conroy based the character on his own father, Colonel Donald Patrick Conroy, a man who named himself the Great Santini after a high-wire acrobat he saw as a child. Colonel Conroy loved that Duvall played him and took full credit for the performance. Duvall earned that Best Actor nomination, going up against Robert De Niro for Raging Bull, and in the same year he played Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now. He delivered two of the most unforgettable military characters in film history. Blythe Danner and Michael O'Keefe both turned in performances strong enough that O'Keefe picked up his own Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Even playing a man this difficult to love, Duvall elevated everyone around him, and the fact that his co-stars earned their own nominations says everything about what it meant to share the screen with him. Out of 7 career Oscar nominations, Tender Mercies delivered Robert Duvall his only win, and it remains one of the quietest performances ever to earn the honor. Max Sledge, a former country music star destroyed by alcoholism, wakes up broke at a Texas roadside motel and slowly rebuilds his life through sobriety, family, and faith. Horton Foote, who wrote 1962's To Kill a Mockingbird, which Duvall also appeared in, wrote the original screenplay, drawing from his nephew's struggles in the country music business. Duvall's preparation went to extremes. He found a local Texas man with the perfect voice and had him read the entire script into a tape recorder so he could study the accent. He also joined a small country band, and they performed at a local bar throughout production. 2 songs on the soundtrack are ones Duvall wrote himself, and a clause in his contract guaranteed nobody else would dub the singing.
Let me know, that's your G, if you always will want.
Tess Harper, who plays Rosa Lee, originally showed up to audition for a minor role, and director Bruce Beresford cast her as the lead in her film debut on the spot. When filming wrapped, Duvall handed her a blue cowgirl shirt with a card that read, "You really were Rosa Lee." 5 Oscar nominations followed, with 2 wins for Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay, capping a creative partnership between Duvall and Foote that started with To Kill a Mockingbird 20 years earlier. Dennis Hopper directed 1988's Colors as the first major Hollywood film to realistically depict Los Angeles gang violence of the 1980s, pairing Robert Duvall with Sean Penn as 2 LAPD officers assigned to the crash unit. Duvall's officer Bob Hodges, a 19-year veteran, relies on diplomacy and street rapport, while Penn's hot-headed Danny McGavin reaches for force. Their partnership drives the film through South Central, Echo Park, and Boyle Heights, and what sells it is how seriously the script treats both the cops and the communities caught in the crossfire. Duvall brings a steady authority to Hodges that makes Penn's intensity land harder by contrast, and the generational tension between the 2 cops mirrors the divide inside the LAPD's approach to gang enforcement. Hodges believes in building relationships on the street, earning trust over time, and Duvall plays him as a man who knows the neighborhood better than his own precinct. The movie fell during a relatively quiet stretch in Duvall's career, but it earned over $46 million on a $6 million budget. It features early roles from Don Cheadle, Damon Wayans, and Tony Todd. Ice-T wrote and performed the title track, and the soundtrack went gold. Colors helped pave the way for the genre that produced Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society in the years that followed, and Duvall's Hodges stands as one of the best veteran cop performances of the decade. A man who understands the streets well enough to know that force alone will never fix them. After 13 years of studio rejection, Duvall invested $5 million of his own money to write, direct, star in, and executive produce 1997's The Apostle. Sonny Dewey, a charismatic Pentecostal preacher from Texas, commits an act of violence, flees across state lines, rebaptizes himself as the Apostle E.F., and builds a new racially integrated church in Louisiana's Bayou Country. The film refuses to reduce Sonny to either a saint or a hypocrite, and Duvall plays him with a ferocity that makes you understand why people follow this man, even when they probably shouldn't. A visit to a small chapel in Arkansas during the early 1960s planted the fascination with Pentecostal preaching, and Duvall put pen to paper on the screenplay in 1984. 7 weeks of shooting in western Louisiana in the fall of 1996 finally brought it to life, with real preachers and churchgoers filling the pews on camera. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars and called it the finest movie ever made about a minister or priest, while Harvard theologian Harvey Cox described it as deeply theological. $21 million in earnings against that $5 million investment proved Duvall right, and he swept nearly every major critics award before landing his 6th Oscar nomination. Jack Nicholson won for As Good as It Gets that year, but the performance cemented what the industry already knew. Duvall didn't need Hollywood because he could finance it himself.
If you won't give me back my wife, give me peace. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me, give me peace. Give me peace.
Virtually every review of 1998's A Civil Action arrived at the same conclusion. Robert Duvall steals the entire movie. His 7th Oscar nomination, and what turned out to be his second to last, came from playing Jerome Fachet, defense attorney for Beatrice Foods in a real lawsuit brought by 8 families in Woburn, Massachusetts, over contaminated drinking water. John Travolta plays the lead as the plaintiff's attorney, who mortgages everything on the case, but Duvall's Fachet commands every scene, concealing a razor-sharp legal mind behind a facade of eccentricity and carrying a beat-up briefcase held together with tape and a Pink Panther sticker. Steven Zaillian, who won an Oscar for the Schindler's List screenplay, wrote and directed the film from Jonathan Harr's 1995 book. $75 million in production costs against just under $57 million in domestic returns made it a clear box office disappointment, but the cast assembled around those performances aged beautifully. James Gandolfini appears just months before The Sopranos turned him into a household name. William H. Macy and Tony Shalhoub portray Travolta's law partners. Back-to-back Oscar nominations for The Apostle and A Civil Action meant Duvall reached that stretch in his late 60s, and while most actors his age are slowing down, he was doing the strongest work of his career. Kevin Costner directed 2003's Open Range and put it plainly from the beginning. If Robert Duvall turned the role down, the movie might not have happened. Duvall plays Boss Spearman, a principled, open-range cattleman in the 1880s, whose way of life faces destruction from a corrupt rancher controlling a small town. Costner co-stars as his partner, and the Western builds patiently toward a climactic gunfight shot in real time, with practical effects, no CGI, and no slow motion. Costner asked the studio to give Duvall top billing over himself, which tells you everything about how he viewed the partnership. At age 71, Duvall got bucked off a horse during pre-production and broke 6 ribs, then filmed the entire movie in Canada, carrying that injury. His own assessment: 15 years ago, he would have handled it in his sleep, so pulling it off under those conditions felt particularly rewarding. The movie did well at the box office and was critically praised, earning nearly $70 million on a $22 million budget, proving that audiences still want to see westerns, provided they're thoughtful and done right. At 84 years old, Duvall earned his 7th and final Oscar nomination for 2014's The Judge, making him the oldest actor ever nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the time. He plays Judge Joseph Palmer, a stern, small-town fixture who has presided for over 35 years and sits estranged from his lawyer son, played by Robert Downey Jr. When the judge faces accusation of a fatal crime, the son who left home and never looked back must return to defend the father who drove him away, creating a story that mirrors the Great Santini 35 years earlier and bookends Duvall's career with 2 domineering patriarchs confronting their children. 42 years separated Duvall's first Oscar nomination for The Godfather in 1972 from this final one, and J.K. Simmons took the award home for Whiplash that year. But the nomination itself carried the weight, proof that at 84, Duvall still commanded the attention of the Academy. He kept working after that nomination, appearing in Steve McQueen's Widows in 2018 and finishing with The Pale Blue Eye in 2022. He left behind nearly 100 films across 7 decades and a legacy built on choosing the work over the spotlight.